And certainly what Rumi does is, of course, never anything that, we can take for granted from that perspective. So this is, I think we read this part about the, hold on a second, we're right about here, that the merchant was about to come back and hold on a second. Do this right. Excuse me. What was it about left side? So we talked about the story that the merchant sees the parrots in India, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think out of that, what happens is when he tells this parrots, hey, this is what I know about your friend, this is the message, and your friend gave me to give you. And then, of course, the parrot, shivers and falls. And this is where Rumi actually gets a little, poetic about this, that the tongue and stone on iron are the same. What leaps out of your tongue's tip is a flame. Don't strike the stone on iron, for you'll roast, for telling stories or just for a boast. So it's basically saying just don't say anything. I think I recall this, that Rasul mentioned this, that if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. And if you remember earlier, Rumi tells us that if you don't have anything good to say, just praise God. And we talked about tasbih, and we talked about, being able to, if you have nothing good to say, just, say subhanallah or alhamdulillah or something like that. Just say something that's different, but don't say the stuff that you are unsure of. And then this line is, a world can be destroyed by what is said, and foxes turn into lions thus instead. And I think we saw the display of that just this past week. I mean, we're seeing displays of it, as a matter of fact. Just realistically speaking, it's, when people are enraged, and I watch these confrontations that are on social media and everything. Like, for instance, people corner a congressman or a congresswoman, doesn't matter what party they're in, and they start, confronting them with words, and these words they utter has got specific, tonations and energy behind it. That's just because of this is exactly what's happening to them. A word can be destroyed. A world can be destroyed by what is said, and foxes turn into lions. Thus instead, spirits like Christ's breath give new life to you, first as a wound, then as a plaster too. So realistically speaking, hopefully we're gonna, get the, get Christ-like breath, so that it actually can heal and it can actually give life. Then it goes into talks about a saying by Attar that why do I do this so much? Something has changed about my PDF, and I don't like it. I don't know when this happened. So zoom. Okay. Excuse me. All right. I guess, can you guys see this from a perspective?
You could use a little bit of a zoom
You
in.
could, yeah. I mean, I could use it myself too. It's just that somehow this thing doesn't scroll well for some reason. Um, okay. So having said that, then, he goes into the story of the magicians and Pharaoh. That, in there, Rumi goes back into saying that he wants to give us again from a word's definition. There is something that is the truth, and there is something that is a thing that's painted like the truth, but it's not truth as a matter of fact. And then he's talking about that whether we like it or not, we encounter these every time, and every time that we encounter it, either we stick with our principles or we leap along to the side that gives us safety as we think we need it here in this world. And then he gives us a very interesting what do you call it, he exemplifies a birth of a baby. It says each baby when it's born screams out in its fears, but when then stays silent for a while, all ears. For hours it has kept its small lips sealed till speech secret should become revealed. So he's telling us that words, first of all, the best way for us to learn is to listen. And this is how we have learned how to actually speak. So, when we are born, we're only screaming. And after that, we keep on listening until we start, uttering words. And then from that point on, and if it doesn't listen, but just cries, it's the most stupid thing beneath the skies. The one born deaf who's never heard a word is mute. How can speech move him? That's absurd. So basically, um, he's talking about the ones who, or people who can hear. He's like, yeah, there's possibility that somebody is born deaf. And in that case, that person is not, it doesn't bear the same responsibility. Then he is talking about, as he's kind of shifts towards the fact that irrespective of how things happen and how the world is around you, you need to shed tears, and then with your tears ask God to actually give you the strength and at the same time the path, so that you can better see the truth. And then he gives us a quick prescription as to what gives us the best strength and the best way to find a vision that we can actually see the path. And he says, what do you know about how tears might taste? You just love bread just like blind men. What a waste. Empty your belly that you have filled with bread, then fill it up with precious jewel instead. It's devil's milk you have fed your infant soul. Take it to angels, feed it from their bowl. This couple of lines, as I said, is what during Ramadan, in at least in Iranian radio television, there's a program that actually recites these few lines every month, and every let's say every year
Evening.
we hear that, yeah. So then it says, when you are weary, gloomy, and depressed, you might be feeding from the devil's breast. So it's like what happens is the way you feel is because of the way you've been feeding your soul. And if you think about it, this is partly, I mean, when I say partly, that's not the right phrase. I think it's true. I mean, when I think about it, every time that I'm actually not feeling well, and I do not feel well, quite a bit. It's every single time I'm completely, off balance and not centered, and I'm distant from the truth. I forget that I do have, a guardian which actually is watching over me. I forget that, It's his will that actually, kind of, puts things in motion. And it's quite often. It just happens. It happens a lot. And we should remember that. We should remember it in our lives. We should remember in our daily lives that, okay, what is this? Is this something that I want to, I want to think through and perhaps, just remind myself in, or do I want to just go through it and keep taking pills or, or other remedies that may not, heal me for good? I mean, it's a choice, and we all come across it, I think, on our lives. So, pure food is like a seed; its fruits pure thought. So basically, when he's talking about pure food, he's talking about the fact that whatever you put in your mouth, whatever you feed yourself, whatever you feed your soul, it will bear the same type of fruit out of it. So if you feed your soul, these tasteless, words or beliefs or hatred or division and all that, it just basically kind of, bears that fruit for you, and you're right along enabling those type of feelings and actions in your daily lives.
In the computer jargon, they say that garbage in, garbage out.
It is garbage in, garbage out, and that's correct. It's basically that. They are, it's a very true statement. You're right. It's garbage in, garbage out. So the more we do it, the more we experience that. So with longing, lawful food will overwhelm your heart, so it can reach the highest realm. So in this case, if you put in the right, and this was the terminology that he uses in the Farsi part, is lughmeh halal and lughmeh haram. So it's haram and halal, and we talked about it, that the halalness of the food, although the common understanding of common men is that the food needs to be, prepared, or the meat needs to be prepared in a specific way. But Rumi thinks through it from a different angle, that what you are earning, if you're earning it by, destroying somebody else's life, no matter how much you buy halal meat, it's still haram. It is still, unlawful, or it's still something that's not. And think about it, these days, a lot of that happens. I mean, I don't want to get personal about this, but again, in our country, in my country, in Iran, a lot of this happened. A lot of people, their lives and their money and everything was moved around when, of course, there was a change in the governments and all that. And because of that, quite a bit of people, achieved a lot of stuff, and quite a bit of people lost stuff. And there's no explanation about it as far as, how haram or halal it was. All it is that you can actually see it as it bears fruit in daily life for people. You just can see that. So, and the same thing is in here. You can totally see it. It is not that, and it's something that if you actually have, look closely, you can see examples of it, unfold in front of you. So this was basically what we talked about last time. So now the story comes to the merchant relates to his parrot what he saw of parrots in India. So the merchant, on completing all his trade, returned home and not prepared to be delayed. He brought a present back for every slave, and to the slave girls, souvenirs he gave. I have highlighted this line. This is a very important line, and it's actually a very interesting way that Rumi is describing this journey and the end of it. Once we finish the story, I'll get back to this, and hopefully you guys fully grasp what it is, and you tell me why he talks about, he refers to this as to them as slaves, or The parrot asked, where is that I chose instead? Where is what I chose instead? Please tell me what you saw and what was said. He said, no, for all that I now repent, with biting fingernails, my hours are spent. Why did I say it? It was premature, through ignorance, or is my judgment poor? So, of course, the merchant is not happy about the fact that he feels that he killed one of the parrots. Master, what's this repentance for? She said. What's brought this rage and grief inside your head? He said, I passed on your complaint once there to birds like you who flew without a care. One of them felt your pain so much she cried. Her frail heart broke. She shuddered, fell, and died. Why did I say this for my little pet? Oh, now it's done. What use is my regret? Regard the words you utter with your tongue. Now he's talking to us. Regard the words you utter with your tongue, a dangerous arrow which you have just flung. An arrow can't be brought back from its course. We have to block the torrent at its source. So, as you can clearly see, Rumi is again talking about what we speak and how what you have spoken is like an arrow that just shoots straight or towards wherever it's supposed to go. So hopefully when we speak, we have, if you, and I know many of you have taken all these, leadership courses and trainings. They always say that you have to speak with purpose and you have to use the words with intention. And the reason they say that is because this is exactly what Rumi has said 800 years ago as well. What you say, it has to have a purpose and an intention. If you don't know what you said, what it could have done, then you are too dumb to speak. So you shouldn't speak. But if you knew, you can't deny it because your words would put things in motion. We can't say stuff and as it happens, then we come back and say, oh, I wasn't intended for it to happen like this. Well, it happens. So you better be careful about what you say. Floods can submerge the world each time they rise. If they destroy the world, that is no surprise. Actions bring forth effects beyond our goal, unseen effects beyond our own control. This is, again, a very, very true statement. Everything that we see as, again, as it comes from our actions is we may think that we are controlling stuff, but, things happen in motion. It just, it is something that just keeps on happening. And sometimes the words are, I don't know how to say it. The words carry actions through generations or carry energy through generations. Just out of curiosity, how many of you guys know how did the Third Reich start?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, the third what?
The Third Reich.
Hitler.
Ah,
How did he start that Third Reich?
tell me about the second first, and then I think about the third. I don't know the second.
Okay. So the Second Reich was actually the government of Germany, which was, in control at the time. Third Reich is, of course, his, it was Hitler's party.
Oh, okay.
And so I didn't know this, and I read this in an op-ed, which was interesting. That I went and looked it up, and it actually is correct. So I urge you guys to search for this. It started from the words, "It's a rigged election."
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
He came back and there was an election and he wasn't elected. He was a very well-spoken person. He actually was very charismatic. He was very well-spoken. The guy knew how to rally crowds and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And he went on to just, again, say that. Again, like I said, we're experiencing this in unfolding through our history, again, as we're going forward, not just in recent days. I'm talking about, let's go back 10 years before or 20 years before. You can actually pick, literally you can handpick areas where a statement was made or a word was given or something was said, and that by itself spun everything out of control. And then all of a sudden, massive number of people lost their lives, and things were all, broken into, of course, ruins. In Iranian history, of course, in the 40 years ago when the revolution happened, the character was, Mr. Khomeini. And one of the things that he said, which a lot of people rallied behind him, which nowadays hindsight, of course, everything is always 2020, was that he said, I would slap this government in the face and I would tear down everything that they have built. And people loved it. And they went behind it. And they did exactly that. And it just kept on happening and happened and happened and happened. And it's still happening, believe it or not. It is something that's words can do wonders. At the same time, there's always the good words that you can, you have somebody like Martin Luther King, who actually comes back and says that I have a dream that white children and black children can actually, be in the same classroom together. I mean, we have words like that as well, which they start from a dream, and then it, gains momentum and energy, and all of a sudden it makes things happen. So again, all of this brings two things into mind. One is, remember that Rumi tells us that this world is a world of opposites. So opposites are unfolding every time they collide. They keep colliding with each other, and it just unfolds, and it unfolds for us. And we just have to be smart, and we need to have, the vision to see how things are unfolding in front of our eyes. And I think it's amazing if you actually get to watch it like that, objectively. If you actually get involved in it, then holy shit, it just gets crazy. I can see that my friends from Atlanta are completely silent about this. My guess is they have already battled this out. Okay. All right. Let's go forward. The Lord creates, so actions bring forth effects beyond our goal, unseen effects beyond our own control. The Lord creates them. Let this be clear, though they are attributed to us down here. So now he's talking about the fact that everything, everything that we see is created by God. Now, he tells us that we do things, but he also now tries to, it's interesting. Rumi brings us to this place where we're like, holy cow, we are God. And then immediately he grabs us by the collar and he pulls us back and he's like, wait a minute. But remember, you're not really anything in here. It's all him. You get to do things because he wants it. And again, that's just something for us to remember. So he says, And he goes into this example about Jim and Jack, whereas in the Farsi version, it's Zaid and Omar. I'm sorry, Zaid and Amr. So Amr and Zaid is like Jim and Jack. So he's saying that, let's just read through it real quick, and then we'll discuss what this means. Jim once was shot by a man named Jack. Okay, somebody shot somebody else. And it wasn't shot by a pistol because it didn't exist back then. It was an arrow. So that's, Second Amendment back then was being able to carry an arrow. So the arrows flew like leopards in attack. So in order to shoot Jack, he had to shoot an arrow. And the arrow just, boom, went all the way through. A year passed. So after Jack is hit, a year goes by, but Jim's suffering wouldn't end. So the interesting part is that so Jim, because he hit the arrow, he's scared. And a year passes by and his fear doesn't go away. Okay, so a year passes, but Jim's suffering wouldn't end. So he's suffering out of scarcity and worry. The Lord creates all pain, not men, my friend. So it's like, while Jack was the one who received the arrow, but it's God who gives Jim that pain as well. Even if Jack on shooting fell and died, so Jack could have got, right when the shooting happened, he would have fell and he would have died. This wouldn't have made Jim's deep pain subside. So the pain that Jim would have suffered was inevitable because of the action of what he did. But since this pain led to the death of Jim, for triggering it, we say Jack murdered him. So it's like the fear could lead to Jim's death. So Jim could kill himself, or he could easily, much sooner than it was intended for him to die out of stress and paranoia. And then we come back and we say, well, it was Jack, or the effect of what happened to Jack, that murdered him or killed him. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like in our eyes, there is an action and reaction and a cause and effect that we keep seeing. And we see them and we attribute them to people. And it's like, this is very true. This is what we see as humans. Pin all the blame on Jack that Jim was slain. Okay, so because Jack was the one who shot, you can pin all the blame on him. Even though God created all the pain. But never forget this, that all the pain that every single one of these people went through was created by God. It was God who created the pain. It wasn't just Jack and Jim or Jack and Jill. Why do I want to keep saying Jill? Anyways, breath, sex, and swing are comparable. So in this case, he's saying that everything is relative and comparable. These are all feelings that we go through. They're all effects which God makes possible. Okay. So he's like, everything is because God has created these possibilities, and people go through it and they feel through it. Okay. Now, this is something that he's describing for us. Now he goes, crap, hold on. Hello. Okay. So now he's talking about the saints. So it says the saints have gained from God such awesome might that they can pull back arrows in mid-flight. So for us, we see cause and effect. We see how it affects people. We see how it actually, affects us. and we hear the words. It affects our thought process. It affects how we feel. It's just our life. That's our daily life. And then it's like on the opposite side of this are select few people like the saints. The saints have gained from God such awesome might that they can pull back arrows in mid-flight. So what can these guys do? They can pull back arrows. So he's saying that nothing is impossible in this world. And nothing is impossible because we are certainly not in control as things happen. It's always, everything is in God's hands. I mean, I'm just saying this for myself. You have to keep remembering that everything is in God's hands. We think that everything is final. Nothing is final. It's his will that just unfolds and manifests, and we see it and we experience it. And we keep forgetting it. We keep on forgetting that because we think we are the one who did it. We were the one who accomplished it. We are the one who gained it. We are the one who caused it. No, that's not the case. It's all him. So he's saying the saints have gained from God. So because they're connected to God, they become part of him and they can pull back arrows. Effects which stem from the original cause, when saints repent, are then compelled to pause. So he's saying that in this case, if they do something and all of a sudden they feel like, oh, this wasn't what I wanted, there is a turn back time possibility with them. It just can happen, according to Rumi. By grace, he makes unsaid what has been said, so no harm comes to anybody's head. So it's like, because of grace of God, what has been said can be unsaid. It can be undone. And because of that, then, no harm is going to happen to them. From all the hearts which heard that harmful word, he wipes out unseen now and unheard. So he's like, if there has been a bad, words that has been uttered out, there's a possibility that, it's kind of like, you remember Men in Black, the movie? They had this flash. He's saying that basically these guys have this flash. Boom, they can do it and you'll forget it. Now he comes back and he says, dear gentlemen, if you need proof of it true, a verse we cause you to forget should do. So he's like, in this case, if you guys don't believe this, there is a verse in the Quran which it talks about it, and the verse is in Surah Baqarah, verse 106. Let's see what this says. Let's go to 106 and we read it together. Oh, 106. So I'm share this other section. So 106 in Surah Baqarah, it says, none of our revelations do we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, but we substitute something better or similar. Knowest, though not that Allah hath power over all things. So it's like in the Quran, it even says that if we want you to not remember something, we will replace it with something else, so you won't remember. Simple as that. This is what he's referring to. So he's saying that, the forgetfulness is something that God would put through to people who he feels they should not be remembering anything. And he puts it through. They caused you to forget. Don't be upset. Observe their power to make you forget. Then they made you forget. Now they remind, and thus they rule the hearts of all mankind. So in this case, this is why Rumi says that they rule mankind's hearts, because they have the ability to rule your heart in such way that you would forget what you needs to be forgotten and you would remember what you needs to be remembered. Now, if I were to give you an example of this, it could be like, there are I mean, all of us have had this, that there are certain events that we just don't, we have a blackout, or we don't remember at all. I personally believe it, that, it was meant to be that way. And if it was meant to be that way, then I won't remember it. And that's fine. And I'm okay with it. Because not remembering is also a gift. It allows you to move forward. It allows you to live. The fact that we don't remember, the fact that we forget feelings, is a gift of God that actually allows us to do what we need to do. We can move forward. Or else people would be mourning forever if they lose a loved one. Or they would be upset over some bad thing, and they would not, move forward. And we do have people like that. Just let's put it this way. I mean, let's not forget that from a perspective of, human psychology, there are certain people who are not willing to move forward on certain causes. And that's fine. But that's very seldom people, very seldom. And majority of these things are something that's treatable. But in our daily lives, we get to forget. And if you forget, that's all good. When you're blinded with forgetfulness, you're impotent. Your skills could count less. Though you thought them a joke, they have God's might. As far as they made you forget, recite. So in this case, you think that, they are basically, you consider them a joke. You thought that, these people who were able to do this, what they were telling you is a joke. And it's like, no, go back and recite those ayahs, and that would tell you exactly why and how this actually happens. Landlords may rule your bodies, not your soul. So in this case, landlords is probably is not the right translation. It's talking about, people who were chief of a village or something like that. He's like, if you live in a village and there are chief of a village rules your body, not your soul. That's in the owner of the heart's control. I mean, it's like whoever owns the heart is the one who actually again owns his soul and gets to choose. And
but the they here is the saints.
So he's referring to us in this one, that you are the one who owns this heart. So you get to actually then you get to affect your soul as well. We don't know that, therefore we allow others to affect it. Okay. However, it's like, even if you are in a caged place, or if you are in a place where there are landlords, let's say you lived in old Russia, this dictatorship, or you lived in, a specific oppressed, society, or a town or a village, whoever is the one who does this to you, again, they can only do it to your body. They can make you do things in a very, very, the good example of this is that movie. You've seen it, hopefully you guys have seen it. It's called It's a Beautiful Life. It's about that guy in the concentration camp, which he tells his child that this is all a game and all that. You get to choose how you actually look at everything. And Rain Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will change. That's basically what this statement is in here as well. Is our choice to look at things the way we have to look at them. And Rumi keeps bringing us to the point that, hey, look at it from perspective of the fact that this is all will of God. Have your trust in God and know that He is the one who will protect you no matter what. And at that point, you won't fear anything anymore. And like I said, I keep telling this to myself. It is really easy to forget. Yeah, Wayne Dyer, I really like him. I mean, the quotes that he has is amazing. And this one is one of them. It says, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will change. I mean, it's a deep statement, but it's very true. Deeds are derived from sight. Please realize. Now again, yeah. Deeds are derived from sights. Please realize that men are just the pupil in their eyes. So you are everything that you see. But again, it's the see or it's the vision that you choose. You can choose everything from a perspective of difference, their difference, black and white, right or wrong, or, foreign or domestic or things like that. Or you could look at everything from different angles as well, human beings or a holistic vision of humanity and heart and souls. Its explanation I'm forced to hide by barriers put up by those inside. So he's like, I cannot explain this all to you. He basically is refraining from explaining this any further. He says, it's explanation I'm forced to hide. I can't give you more than this. Why? Because there are certain people who are telling me that this is enough. So these are, again, some of those, secrets that Rumi has seen. And of course, they cannot be told to anyone. Since all forgetfulness and memory depend on him, he'll answer every plea. So it's like, if that's the case, if you really want to know more, you're the one who's supposed to plea it, because he's the one who creates all forgetfulness and memory. So why don't you plea to him? Thousands of good and evil things each night. Now he shifts again now to us. And what happens to us, and he's trying to get us to fully understand this forgetfulness and memory, and tell us that we're not really in control of anything at the end of the day. So he says, thousands of good and evil things each night he empties from men's hearts and out of sight. We sleep every night, and he's like, every time you sleep, things are emptied from your heart and your sight. That's true. By day, he pours them in their hearts once more, refilling shells with pearls they used to store. So it's like, this happens every night. There are things that are taken out of your body, and they're again brought back and put back into your body and through your own body. Knowledge of things we used to utilize, God's guidance helps our souls to recognize. Your skills and talents all return to you to let you keep on doing what you do. Everything that you remembered or everything that you knew how to do the day before, it comes back right back to you. The jeweler's skill don't reach more ironmongers. It's like a jeweler's skill goes back to the jeweler. And the guy who is an ironmonger gets back what he knew the day before. A good man's virtue won't reach veil warmongers. So a warmonger would never get a good man's virtue. These things won't get switched. It all goes back to the people it was supposed to go to. Your skills and virtues, like your property, will be returned on Judgment Day. You'll see. So it's like, just like how every night your body is emptied and then it actually, gets filled up again. These things will follow you as you actually get judged. It will never be lost. Now, another scientific example of this is like when you actually read the science of DNA. You know that your DNA does carry quite a bit of ancestry with it. I mean, it goes all the way back to, I don't know how many generations, but it's quite a few hundred, I think, you know, and you can just totally, you know, keep sequencing it. Amazing. Just as they do when from your deep sleep you wake back to the rightful owner, no mistake, returning from that place that can't be seen, where good and evil thoughts had also been. Like carrier pigeons which have been abroad, they bring back to their home a wondrous hoard. So basically, it's basically every time that they leave, they bring back to us. Now, this whole day of judgment is something that eventually we're going to talk about it, but in reality, Rumi believes that we are getting judged on a daily basis. We get judged every time that we stand before God to pray. Our praying, or our commitment to prayer, is our commitment to being judged. And he's like, as you get emptied and then you get filled back in with all these skills and all the thoughts and everything, sometimes you've heard the expression of sleep on it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In my experience, every time I sleep on something, the next day it's not as severe as I thought. It's still there, but it's not as bad. It's interesting that if you sleep on it a few times, it actually becomes pretty, normal. So technically what this means is that, I mean, the way I explain it to myself is like, well, every time if this thing is like, getting recycled, it just loses its effect. Which then if it loses its effect, that means that it wasn't necessarily truth to begin with. So it wasn't supposed to be there. Let me give you another example. Your love for your children. Every night that you sleep, when you get up, your love doesn't, decrease an inch. It probably grows. Your love for your significant other, when you actually sleep and you get up, it grows. It doesn't go back. It doesn't shrink. But perhaps sometimes you're angry, your anger, your hatefulness, your awful thoughts, when you actually sleep and you get up, they actually kind of lose their effect. So think about that. And this is what Rumi is trying to tell us, that there's certain truth around it.
It's interesting because there's a collective aspect to this. Like individually, there's like our souls. Our souls leave our bodies and then they come back. But that he's saying that each person gets back their skills that they had before implies that it's not the case that you would wake up in somebody else's body.
Nope.
Right. But then that means that was something that people think about. Or is that something that people would think about? I mean, I wonder, because I guess it's interesting because like our whole thing is losing ourselves, fana, right? We'll leave and then we come back.
So, okay, so you got it. I think I lost you, or I lost your explanation.
Or my question is how like it's okay. So there is a point then, which where there are like it feels like there's something metaphysical underpinning this, where it's like
absolutely there is definitely metaphysical in here. Yeah.
So we're all of our identity, or the thing that makes us ourselves, as far as like skills and memories,
our perceived identities.
Our perceived identities
right.
are annihilated into God.
Yeah.
And then it's not there. Their identities are gone.
Right. And why is that? That's a very good point. But why is that?
Because I would think it's like our perceived identities are.
It wasn't the truth to begin with.
Yeah.
So
I see
you
that.
are so your identity on right now as you stand. I'm just going to guess a few things, and they probably are very true. So you're a husband, you're a friend, you're a son, and you are a cousin, and you are an engineer, and you're a boss, and you are this, and all these things. These are your identities. They're identities that are attributed to you, right? All of them are given to you here in this life because of certain circumstances, which if those circumstances change, those identities can be taken away as well. They could. But your identity as an spiritual man, that can't be taken away. Your identity as you relate to love cannot be taken away. Your identity as you look at kindness, it can't be taken away. It's interesting. I mean, like, for instance, when you look at eulogies, every time they look at eulogy, they never, I mean, I used to actually do this just for fun. And I started doing that actually when COVID started. It wasn't fun. It was just that there was so much of it. I mean, it's bad to say. It wasn't fun, I tell you. But I was curious what people say about their loved ones. And everyone, it's so funny. Everyone was talking about how loving and how kind and how good-hearted and how giving and how generous their loved one was. Nobody said that the guy, bonused, a top tier in his company, or nobody said that this guy, had, was the wealthiest guy in his, family or whatever. But everyone went after anything that had to do with anything that was heartfelt. So the reason people say those things, because what's eternal is what comes eternally from God. Those attributes are totally attributes that connects us to God. You'll never write that, hey, this guy was the angriest man I had ever seen. I think he's going to have a fight right now with all the angels as they actually come and greet him. I mean, you would never say that. But again, it tells us what is it that we connect with, and what comes from us naturally, and what is it that we are subjected to, and we are pressured to sometimes identify with, which is wrong. And Rumi is trying to get us to actually look at things differently again. Like I said, Wayne Dyer doesn't say this any better. I mean, he's like, he wants us to start looking at things differently, because when you look at things differently, the things that you look at will change. The more you feel that this life is I'm sorry to say this, but shitty life, all you're going to get is a shitty life. It just works this way.
Mohsen?
Yes.
But that really begs the question that some people are like that. That's not their own fault.
And I'm not saying it's their fault or not, but at some point it becomes a choice.
No, what I'm saying that they don't have a choice.
You mean they have never seen kindness?
Well, no. The way that they feel is how they are born to feel that way, and it's not going to change.
And also, if I could add another thought to what Mr. Rasool said, eulogies are less about the deceased and more about who wrote that eulogy, isn't it? Like, no matter how much I dislike somebody, I am primed never to say anything negative about someone who has passed on.
Yeah.
Would you ever write a eulogy for somebody that you never liked?
Sorry?
Would you ever write a eulogy for somebody you never liked?
Even the people that I like, there are things about them that I don't like. Right?
Okay, hold on. I get it. Yeah, you're right. You might not like the color of their tie. I get that. But
and Mohsen, also, I have a little trouble in accepting your analogy when you said No one talks about someone's salary or bonuses or anything like that. You said that earlier.
Yes, I did.
Say
Yeah.
their love. How do you express love? When we say someone is generous, what that means is that person. I'm totally playing devil's advocate now. So when I say
So,
someone,
I can see that your wife was like looking at you right now.
it's like, what's wrong with you?
She was like giving you a look.
No, look. We
Alright.
call people generous when they give us presents, when they share their
No,
blessings with us.
actually, that's you're right. So that's what we think generosity is,
Mhm.
because we think that generosity is measured by material stuff. Sometimes,
Non-material. I'll
hold
give
on
you
a second. No, generosity is in many different ways. If somebody spends 3-4 hours consulting you and allowing you to, prepare for a specific interview without having to charge you anything or do anything, just doing it because they want to make sure that, you are successful in what you're about to do, that is generosity, man.
True.
I mean, if somebody does give that, I mean, it's not that monetary means. I mean, gosh, if that was the only, I mean, Sheldon Adelson just died. You know who that guy is, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's
And I know
going
him,
directly to the hell.
Okay, so he went directly to hell. There you go. But did you read? So if you want to think through it, his wife wrote a letter on Twitter about, how she perceived them. Of course, in there, she's talking about, how generous he was and how much he gave to the poor or whatever. However, what we know, or perhaps what we have known about him, is the other causes that he also gave huge amounts of money to. And some of them converged and some of them did not converge. Now, that still doesn't, in my eyes, he's not a generous man. So generosity, it's a different measure. There's always that story about, I think people talk about, I don't know, they portray this to Bill Gates or something, that there's a kid that actually had, I don't know, an umbrella or whatever, that was his only possession or something like that, or he was selling a newspaper, but he gave the umbrella to Bill Gates so that, he could go about his business. Whereas, Bill Gates was able to actually buy, a ton of them, but, at that point, he didn't have his wallet or whatever. I don't know. You always are measured through, these things are heartfelt. Generosity is never looked at from perspective of how much you give. For instance, the worst type of generosity that I've seen, all of you guys have been in these situations. You guys, go to a fundraising or something, and then somebody goes, oh yeah, so-and-so family is giving $5,000. Everybody claps. And then, the guy that's next to him is like, yeah, okay, I'll give 1,000 too. And I'll give 5,000 as well. That's great. I'm not saying that's bad. It's just that when you look at that whole, place, it's just like everybody is now trying to kind of top each other or somehow make sure that they are, all right, I also contributed. The best amount of contributions are the ones that nobody knows about. And just do it without having to really, I mean, realistically speaking, again, because you brought up generosity, I want to bring this up into the surface. We become generous every time that we give something up that to us, it has not necessarily monetary value, but it has a value that it would be hard for us to replace it. If I have $1 billion, I hope I'm able to at least give $1 million every year. $1 million. I mean, look at me. I'm only willing to give 1%. Less than it. Think about that. So
Actually, it's not 1%.
It's not even 1%. It's 0.01%. Exactly.
Exactly.
So think about that. So I'm like, holy shit, 1 billion? No, I want to keep it. Why? Because this is my ego talking. This is my nafs. It's talking. It's really talking. Holy shit, you got to get it. Don't pledge too much. So I think these are things to think about. And I think the way I look at stuff that Rumi says, it's all hints as far as how much we can expand our hearts and our souls. How much expansion room it has.
Mohsen,
Yes.
I'm going to give you an example that you can touch and feel what generosity is. Generosity is when you are willing to give up your best dress, your best suit that you have, instead of taking the ones they don't fit you anymore to Goodwill.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Taking the ones that don't fit you anymore to Goodwill doesn't make you generous.
Yeah. I agree with you. You're right. You're right. So yeah, again, all of us have to think through these things. I mean, these are the basic human values that somehow we have kind of deviated from it. I want to say society has deviated from. I mean, we like to give to charities, and that's great. And don't get me wrong, it's good. Please give. Don't say that I'm saying something that's discouraging or anything. But charities are that. I mean, just like what Rasul said, when you actually give somebody something yourself, it's different than when you give it to somebody else to give it to that person. There is a emotional connection every time you give yourself. That whole act is very emotionally rewarding, and psychologically, because your psychological health actually improves as well. But our society is built that, we have to, we pledge to St. Jude, for instance, and that's great. I mean, I saw so many St. Jude, commercials, during the holidays, and it's very touching commercials and so forth. It's a great concept, or other Shriners Hospital or any other hospitals, and back home, there are so many needy places that we can always contribute to. The fact of the matter is that put ourselves a little, just an extra foot forward, it really helps. It helps us, as a matter of fact. It doesn't matter how much it helps them, it actually helps us. Think about it. It's a selfish act. It is a selfish act. So, all right. Good discussion. Thank you. Any other questions, Sonny? We're good with generosity?
Look, when you're sitting in that charity gala and someone says, Mr. Mohsen gave 5,000, that, now Mr. Mohsen is a role model for me. I want to be like him. So I don't see that as a bad practice. I see that as a good practice. Be the change that you want to be. Be an example.
Okay, fine. That's right. But I sincerely hope that 5,000 was given out of heart, not out of ego. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately,
it is such a
charity functions. Everything is given out of ego. Unfortunately.
Actually, let's refer to Quran. Quran encourage charity, and it says clearly, both in public and private. And as there are public, as our friend said here, is have a power of multiplying, and in private, obviously, very seldom those people who in public they give a lot, in private they do not give at all, unless if it is a business type or some kind of show off convention or something. But that's my experience.
Which in our city, Mr. Mohsen, we see quite a bit of it. I mean, thank God to COVID that all of these galas are closed. But I swear, I mean, it's a charity gala, and then women, they buy these dresses and, you know, they make up and guys are in tux and ties and all that. Is this going to go to the poor or the needy? If that's the case, then come in your flip-flops and
Yeah,
give me the money.
Yeah.
Speaking of flip-flop, you've heard the story what Mahatma Gandhi did with his flip-flop, haven't you?
No, I haven't.
He was, you know how it's customary in India for people to wear flip-flops? And he was riding a train one time, and he dropped one of his flip-flops. So he turned around and he dropped the other one right behind him. They said, "Why'd you do that?" But he says, "Well, the guy who finds one, at least he can use both of them."
There you go. Yeah. No, seriously. I mean, in this day and age, yeah,
Mr. Rasool, my one of my uncle did that exact thing, and I thought this idea was his invention. Here he stole it from Gandhi. You ruined it for me.
Now you know.
Now I know.
Oh gosh. Gonna cause a family feud. Rasool. All right. Awesome. So let's get back to the story. So the parrot hears about the action of those other parrots and then die in her cage. So the owner laments for her. So about the other birds, when she was told, this parrot trembled, fell, was knocked out cold. So immediately when the parrot hears what happened to the other one, she does the same thing. She basically dies. On seeing her fall like the one before, the merchant leaped. His cap fell on the floor. So he actually was surprised, and of course he's upset. When he saw her look like she'd nearly died, he tore his jacket open and then cried, "Oh, darling parrot, sweeter than a kiss. What's happened to you? Why are you like this? My sweet voiced bird, please say it's not the end. I'll ask my confidant and closest friend. My parrot had a singing voice so fine and smelt like basil. She was my soul's wine. If Solomon had a bird so rare, he'd have forgotten all the rest, I swear. Alas, this bird for whom I didn't pay, which let me then to easily turn away." So he's like, he's talking about, it's not necessarily saying that, you know, this is the bird that I didn't pay. This is a bad translation. The true translation is that I found him cheap. This is a bird that I found cheap. It's not that I didn't pay for it. It's just the fact that the bird was, I guess, hold on.
Found him at the Humane Society.
Exactly. I didn't necessarily, you know, take care of it or do the right thing about this. Anyways. So now he goes, "Oh, tongue," again, gets back to tongue. This tongue. "Oh, tongue, you hurt so many everywhere. Since you keep talking, what can I declare?" So he's like, as long as your tongue keeps talking, your heart can't do anything. Your tongue keeps on talking. "Oh, tongue, you're like both fire and stacks of hay. How long will you set them alight this way?" So he's now really pissed off. And then he goes, "The soul mourns secretly because of you, although it does the things you tell it to do." So it's like my soul is frustrated with you because you keep talking. So remember, we talked about ansetu, that's in Quran, right? We talked that we read that ayah. The fact that in the Quran it says that every time the Quran is being recited, please listen, ansetu. Okay, and Rumi is taking that and broaden it for us in the fact that when you want to feed your soul, you have to listen. You listen and you feed the soul. So he's now saying that, because the tongue talks so much, the soul mourns secretly because of you, although it does the things you tell it to. But you are treasure too. The tongue can be a treasure, which will endure, as well as pain for which there is no cure. So a tongue can also be a treasure. It can be something that can be very useful to us. Like the hunter's whistle, you deceive, but then console the trapped birds when they grieve. So he's saying that, you can deceive people to actually fall in a trap, or you can console people who have fallen into trap. Two different things. People who fall into trap are people who actually fall into a trap of this life, this earthly life. People who have fallen into the trap and want to get out are people who are caged in this body, or the souls who are caged in this body, and they want to be free. And he's saying that the tongue can console them or allow them to actually, pass this time so that they would be freed. You have made my bird fly off due to distrust. Stop acting like you're born to be unjust. Please answer me, or let me have redress, or give me reasons to feel happiness. So he's like, he's basically, it's partly Rumi, it's partly the story of this merchant that, hey, he's telling his bird to talk or say something. Alas, that light which burned the dark away, alas, the dawn that brighten every day, alas, that bird which flew so beautifully from one end to the other deep in me, until the end heart sing my lovesick grief, I swear, until in hardship for relief. So he has said a few things in here that partly from the merchant, which says that the bird was something that was like a light or a beacon for me, that I could actually see the truth with it. And then he's talking about the fact that of course this was something that I could experience flight, or I could experience the flight of my soul with, because I was so connected with this bird. And then he goes, the people in this place where he's talking about until the end heart sings my lovesick grief. This is a bad translation, that's the thing. So he's shifting to the people who they feel that because of love, or because of loving something, and once they lose that thing or person that they have loved, they need to be in agony forever. Okay. And he's like, you have to understand that the people who truly understand what love is, and they have arrived at true love, they would never suffer. And the one who are always in grief, or they're lovesick, they're because they have found the false way of loving. And that's why they are in grief and they are lovesick in a sense. I fled from pain through love of your kind face. Then in your stream of scum, I felt no trace. So he's like, bad translation again, but I'll try to actually do this right. So the first line is correct. So I fled from pain through love of your kind face. He's talking about, when I found love, when I found the true love, I was relieved from the pain. And then the second line is funny, because it says it's not scum. Scum is the wrong translation. It's the hardship. It's like, every time I was connected with your love, I did not see any trace of hardship anymore. That's what he means. I cry imagining you in the distance, while cut off from my blissful past existence. Now you can see that this all of a sudden starts switching. Now it switches again to this part, which is again, love that Rumi has for his beloved. I cry imagining you in the distance, while cut off from my blissful past existence. God's jealousies, the cause. What can one do? Which heart by his love wasn't torn in two? So God's jealousy. The word in Farsi is called ghayrat. Okay. Now, ghayrat in Farsi means that when you feel that something belongs completely to you, you have ghayrat over that thing. So a husband, for instance, is ghayrati over his wife, and a wife is ghayrati over his husband or her husband. And in Farsi, we also have these expressions like the guy becomes ghayrati. So that means that he's angry. Why? Because something that actually belonged to him, all of a sudden somebody else is looking at it. Majority of the time, ghayrati is a term they use for men, who, feel that, somebody looked at their wife in a different way.
Yeah, mostly about transgressions about their wives.
Exactly. Yeah. So God's jealousy is the wrong expression here. But again, I don't think if he really could do any better in here. So it's like, why is it that this happens? Because God has, it feels that whoever has found true love belongs to him. So he is in this herd of people who are completely controlled and completely protected by God. So therefore, God is very protective of them. So it says, God jealousy, the cause, what can one do? Which heart by his love wasn't torn in two. So he's like, the way this happens is that, if you actually get into, so a heart that can tore into two, it's not actually two. The word is 100 in the Farsi version. So it's like the heart just can't take it anymore. It just implodes or explodes once it actually gets the full love of God. Since he is alone, beyond all other things, our explanations and our mutterings, would that my tears were waves of vast sea that sprayed on my beloved constantly. So he's like, because of this, there is just no way I can, I cannot describe this. I cannot describe, all I can do is I can actually just let down a sea of tears so that you see that how I feel about my beloved. Now he connects back into the parrot. My parrot was a most perceived bird, translator of my thoughts that were unheard. My lot and what would be held back as well, right from the very start, she could foretell. That bird's voice came from revelation's source. Her birth before existence took its course. Inside one, this true parrot is concealed. Through her reflections, everything's revealed. Now he's talking about he switches from his parrot to our parrot. So there is a parrot inside all of us. And this parrot that's inside all of us, he is the parrot that's inside all of us wants to fly away, wants to be freed out of this cage. So that's why, everything about him is concealed. Though what we see out of him is every time we connect with him, we see a reflection of him outside of ourselves. Okay. She takes away your joy, but you can't care, but you don't care. You even swear her tyranny is fair. So he's like, every time your parrot is happy, you take happiness from him. This is basically what this line is. Every time the parrot inside you is happy, you are happy. Every time the parrot inside you is sad, you are sad. So therefore, a parrot is, as you can tell, is a symbolism for the soul. So now he's talking about the fact that your soul, every time your soul is happy. So the food for soul is so important. Every time we feed the soul and the soul is happy, we are happy. Every time we feed the soul and he is not happy, then we are doing something wrong. This is why we have Ramadan. Because in Ramadan, we're supposed to feed the soul, not the body. We have to abstain from actually feeding the body and actually attend to feeding the soul. But we switch day and night, and we sleep during the day and eat at night, because we have to keep feeding the body. The soul will get whatever it gets, whenever it gets. But the body can never be hungry. She takes away your joy. She takes away your joy, but you don't care. You even swear her tyranny is fair. Lightening your spirit for your body's sake. You have burnt your spirit. Now the rest must bake. Now he's saying that, basically, every time that I get to, burn my ego, I bake everything else. So every time the ego is burned, everything else bakes. That means that everything else becomes just better. I am fire. Get tender here and for free, so you can set your scraps alight through me, for setting things on fire, since tinder's fit. Come take this tinder, which is easily lit. So he's like, come and basically, he's like, every time, so the tinder that he's talking about is something that actually is lit, and it can actually light up everything around it. So every time you light up the heart, not only you are light up, but at the same time, everything around you can actually see the effect. So he's like, just do it. If you feel that I have been burned because I've been lit up, come and take some of this burned tinders that actually can burn very quickly. Take it, use it for yourself, and burn yourself. Every time that you want to burn some fire, you use charcoal. Charcoal is basically a burned wood, which actually catches fire much easier. That's what he's saying. It's such a shame that a ravishing full moon was clouded over by fog so soon. So now he's talking about the fact that, basically, he's talking about his own beloved, but in this case, he's also talking about the parrot. That's something that was so lavishing and that was so helpful to me, all of a sudden just went underneath the clouds. How can I speak now that my heart's blaze, my exile lying hungry in a daze? When sober, violent, and when drunk, he's mad. Picture him after all the wine he's had. So he's like, he's now talking about the fact that he's describing this thing and madly describing it. That every time I'm with my beloved, I'm happy. Every time he's away, I'm sad. And that's not helping me, but I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I'm burning inside, and just burn. That you see it and you feel it. And I hope that you actually catch some of this fire so you can actually light yourself up. But just, you have to understand that, if my heart is completely ablaze and it's on fire, I don't know what's going on. I really don't know what's going on around me, in a sense. And then he says, when sober, violent, and when drunk, he's mad. This is when, he's talking about every time he's talking about the lover. When he's sober, he's violent because he's away from his love. And when he's drunk, he's mad because he wants to be always with his love. Picture him after all the wine he's had. The drunken lion is beyond all words, too big for pastures, which can hold vast herds. So it's like, this lion of my heart, which, has, felt this love, is just too big or too wild or too violent for any pasture that you might actually imagine. Now, this is I wish you guys could read this in Farsi. This is like one of the best lines. It says, I think of rhymes. He's telling himself this. It's like, I think of rhymes, but the beloved says, just for my face, reserve your constant gaze. He's like, I keep thinking of what rhyme am I going to say? The next line and the next line. How do I actually say these things? Because I'm about to just say things right after another for you. And he goes, but, my beloved tells me, like, forget about these rhymes. Why do you keep thinking about rhymes? Think about me. Have your eyes on me. Sit comfortably, my rhyme enthusiast. To me, you rhyme with fortune that will last. So it's like, just think about me. Don't think about the rhymes, how these rhymes are supposed to look like. Words aren't for lovers to reflect upon. What then are words? He's like, words are nothing. He's like, what are they? Around vines, they're a thorn. So it's like, they're nothing. Words are nothing. It's because, when you connect, you're supposed to connect through the heart. You don't connect through the tongue. And he's not talking about French kiss. He's talking about, if you keep talking, you won't hear the sound of a lover. So you have to be quiet. You have to be listening. And the moment you listen, your heart opens. And the moment your heart opens, your heart connects to your lover. And once the heart connects to your lover, you only see the lover. And the only thing that you can see is him. So basically, these things will just come naturally to you. Whatever you're supposed to say will just come to you naturally. So he says, words aren't for lovers to reflect upon. What are then words? Around vines, they are a thorn. Words, sound, and speech I strike relentlessly, so I can talk to you without these three. So he's like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the word and the sound and speech, all of them together, so that I can talk to you without the three of them. Do you think that's possible? Think about that. That is possible. You know what's funny? I recently, I did some dog sitting for the first time in my life. I'd never owned a pet. So I'm actually thinking of getting a dog now, which is like a completely different story. But so I had my friend's puppy for 48 hours. And that they say that, dogs give you unconditional love. I don't want to get so, crazy about this and so forth, but you can actually feel it that they feel your emotion. They feel they don't speak. They don't say anything. As a matter of fact, puppies can't even bark. You feel what they are saying or what they want, and they feel you at the same time. You get mad, they feel it. So this thing that he says in here is possible, and you can experience it if you have to really understand what this means. But what he's saying is this: when you arrive at your lover, when you arrive in her presence or in his presence, word, sound, and speech I strike relentlessly, so I can talk to you without these three. The word I kept now. Right after this, these lines are very important, and I want you guys to think through it and be with me. We may not finish this section tonight, but these are very, very important lines. As soon as he tells you that I'm going to give up the words and I'm going to give up the speaking and I'm going to give up all these things because I want to connect fully with my lover. I want to be there. I want to connect with him. Okay. Now he says, the word I kept from Adam all these years, this is Rumi now switches context, and this is coming from God. The word I kept from Adam all these years, my secret, I'll now whisper in your ears. What I would not tell Abraham, I'll tell. And things that Gabriel doesn't know as well. The words that the Messiah couldn't say, even without Ma or us, here God won't convey. So Rumi is now giving us a glance at how deep these secrets of this universe are, that even Adam or Abraham or Jesus were not told. But there are a group of people that God would reveal them to them. So Ma in Farsi means us, or two people, more than two people. Okay? So he's like, God would not have conveyed them without us. Unless we were there, he would not have said it. He didn't say it to Adam. He didn't say it to Abraham. He didn't say it to Jesus. What is Ma? Now all of a sudden he switches again another context. Because in Farsi, the word Ma comes from when I am talking about me, the me who thinks that, he is, somebody, or he has, earned something, or he has a specific degree or something like that. He's like, what's Ma? I can affirm, and it negates. I'm not affirmed for love annihilates. Oh gosh, I can't pronounce it. Yeah. So he's saying that all there is to about Ma is something that's, of course, it's something that reaffirms me. But in Arabic, when you put Ma in front of anything, you either are negating it or you're trying to affirm it. So when you say Maha Kaza, for instance, is like, why is that like that? You're trying to negate it. So he's like, this Ma that is something that you think that with your brain, because it's either you have to negate it or you have to affirm it. But that's not what I was talking about. The Ma I'm talking about is us from this group. So now, oh gosh, this is also beautiful. He says, I found a person, and in the person is this is a bad translation. It's like, if I had to be somebody, I found it when I became nobody. That's what the first line is. I found being somebody when I became nobody, meaning when I was emptied out of my ego, an individual and non-entity. Because every time that I wanted to, understand who I was, I had to first understand that I wasn't anything. The moment you became empty of yourself, you become full of God. And that is when you become somebody. Then he gives us an example. He goes, for every king subservient to his slave, men die for those whom choose their grave. So it's like, in this case, he's saying that never forget this, that every king is always a subservient person to his own slaves. In order for his slaves to like him, he needs to do stuff that they like him. I mean, in reality, all these kings that you see that they last, or like the queen has to do things that people like. Queen can't do stuff that people don't like, or else she won't last. So they're a slave to their own people.
I mean, else you will be Trump?
Yes. You're becoming a wise man, Mohsen.
The Rasul worked hard on me, so
That's good. I'm grateful for Rasul. I know he's probably gone through great length. So before protesters, kings fall down prostrate, and sober people drunks intoxicate. So he's like, all there is to it is that everybody becomes drunk because of their own drunkenness. So he's talking about us when we're consumed with ourselves. We're always consumed with what our ego has constituted for us, and that gives us our drunkenness. And that's a bad drink. That's a bad remedy. That's a bad feeling. That's a bad ecstasy in us. If the hunter changes to the bird's own prey to make them his own victim in this way. So it's like, you have to understand that we are being hunted by our own ego. And the way ego does this is that, first of all, it just becomes kind of like what the soul is supposed to be, and then it hunts us. Sometimes the ego tells us that, hey, go ahead and pray. Oh, go ahead and pray. Yeah, in front of these people, go ahead and pray. That's ego talking. I swear to God, ego tells us stuff. And sometimes we fall victim into it. Sometimes I watched Iranian television, and there's some sad event or something, and you can totally tell, and they have these cameras that are showing everybody. And, people have got their head in their hand, and they're like, trying to, show that they're weeping or something. And there's always this one guy who's like looking at the cameras. And then he goes, oh, now it's time. Oh, he just starts weeping. I mean, you can totally see it. Like, God, dude, come on. Anyways, guys, I'm going to stop right here just because there's the next section of this part is going to, if I don't finish it, then, we're going to lose all chance. I mean, this is actually a pretty good part to actually draw the line. So it's 1745. And then we've got a little bit more until.
That's a long section.
Yeah, that's a long section. So we're gonna take care of this next time. But I think again, think about where he's been and how he tells us that. Again, it's our heart and soul which constitutes our happiness. So feed the soul as much as possible. And I think, again, Wayne Dyer, remember what he says. It says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So let's start changing that. Yeah.
So most
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A question for you, sir.
Yes.
In the very beginning, you highlighted that couplet where when the traveler comes back and he brings presents for all the slaves and slave girls. Did we explain that? And
I didn't explain that, and I want you guys to explain why he's calling them slaves.
why is he calling whom a slave?
He's talking about the people that he brought presents to from India. Now, remember, India is supposed to be the land that, it's exactly a spiritual land. So everybody wanted something out of the spiritual land. So others wanted presents, and he gave them the presents, and they were the slaves. And then, of course, was the parrot, and parrot wanted something different.
So other people were slave to the material, while the parrot was looking for something more.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So who are the slaves then?
Everybody who asked for a material present, us. Yeah.
Yeah. And God gives it to us. If you pray and you say, hey, God, I want a Porsche this year and I really want it. Please give me a raise so I'll get a Porsche. You'll get a portion. I guarantee you. When you pray and you want it from God, He'll give it to you. I have done it. Again, guilty. But it's the soul who actually is asking for something different. He wants freedom. Not everybody understands that. So we always get what we want from God. He says, Ud'uni astajab lakum. You call me and I'll do it for you, no matter what. Very nice.
A quick question on the secret that God didn't give to Adam, or even Gabriel doesn't know, right? I heard a couple of different things and I just want to kind of go into them. Is it that we don't